2, 1, and you're live. Thank you, Chairman.
Good evening and welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on Thursday, the 19th of November 2020. My name is Councillor Richard Siddle and I am the Chairman of the committee. This meeting is held under new regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April in response to the COVID-19 situation, and there are just a few housekeeping issues to run through. First of all, please could I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure your microphone remains muted and your video feed off when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noises and avoid any unintentional disturbances. This meeting is being hosted remotely, streamed live and recorded, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to be recorded. Members and officers, during each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating you wish to speak or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purposes. This is extremely important tonight as we have an external representative attending the meeting who can read the chat function. Please do not use the raise hand function as this is not available on all members' devices. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or a paragraph number. And lastly, if members need to leave the meeting at any point, please do make this known and use the chat function to signify that you need to leave the meeting. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Leslie.
Good evening, Chris Leslie, Director of Resources.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Porteous.
Good evening, Lance Porteous, Lead Finance Specialist.
Ms. Bird.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. Tara Bird, Committee Services Officer for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Tara. Are there any other officers present?
Good evening, Chair. Stephen Butcher, Commercial Manager.
Good evening, Stephen. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. Richard Thomas, Director of Service Delivery.
Thank you, Richard.
Good evening, Chair. Matt Wilson, Countryside and Case Manager.
Good evening, Matt. Thank you.
And good evening, Paul Dodson, Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance.
Thank you very much, Paul. Tara, please can you now carry out a roll call of members to confirm who is in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, if you could just indicate when I call your name if you're here, please. Starting with Councillor Mrs. Channer, please.
Hold on. I'm just so we have to do this. Let you see me. Yes, here I am.
Thank you very much.
I'm present, Tara. Good evening, members, everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
Good evening, Miss Bird. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm present. Thank you.
Good evening,
Councillor Durham.
Councillor Edwards.
Good evening. Present.
Good evening. Thank you. Councillor Helm.
Present, Tara.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, good evening, Tara. Good evening, all members. Good evening, officers and everybody on the call. I'm present, Tara.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Siddle said, Councillor Skeens.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
Yes, present, Tara.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
Good evening, Tara. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, we understand Councillor Miss White is on her way but is running a bit late. Members, could I ask any members in attendance, please, if they could advise that they're here, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members and staff. Councillor Mark Hurd, Chairman of the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd.
Good evening and welcome. Chrissy Morris is here.
Morris.
And also Anne Hull, Councillor Hull.
Councillor Hull.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Councillor Bassinger in attendance.
Thank you, Councillor Bassinger. Chairman, that concludes the roll call for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Bird. Item number 2 on the agenda is apologies for absence, and we've heard that Councillor White will be running late and hopefully turn up at some particular point, and there are no other apologies. So item number 3 is the minutes of the 17th of September 2020. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September 2020, found on pages 5 to 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute even your microphone and state your name now.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. If any member wishes to raise any matters of accuracy, please use the chat function to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Tara, has anybody asked to speak at all?
No, Chairman, there's no indication of anyone wishing to speak on this item. Thank you.
Okay, so can I take the minutes in terms of a matter of assent? Do councillors agree?
Agreed.
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 Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, members. So item number 4 is declarations of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disposable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8, inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. If any member has an interest to declare, please use the chat function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. I see the first person is Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be declaring non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council. And certainly I've seen a reference to them in, I think it was agenda items 6 and 7, but anywhere else on the agenda that it might pertain to them. And also, Chairman, regarding when we get to items 13, 14 and 15, which will be the precursor to going, well, they are going to be including the precursor going into private session, I will be removing myself from the chamber for the private and confidential matter. And I don't know if I can say this in public, but because an organisation mentioned within the document, I am a member of that body, which I'm appointed to through a body via Essex County Council. So I feel, bearing in mind every time it has arisen, this matter pertaining to the item in that private and confidential, I have never been involved in a discussion at Malden District Council, so I will vacate the chamber, Chairman. And I didn't want to identify the body I'm a member of because I think it might give the game away what the item might be.
Okay.
If you get my, so I'm not being secretive, it's just that I think
I understand.
You have to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Skeens.
Yes, I'm a member of the West Key Houseboat Association, which holds a lease with Malden District Council. It's therefore a pecuniary interest, and I'm not actually sure if it comes up specifically in this. I didn't find it, but I will maintain my awareness, and if I have to, I'll withdraw should such things come up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Skeens. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I declare a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item number 9, fees and charges policy, as I've had some conversations with some of those persons potentially affected by the policies. And also agenda item number 12, please, Chair, because I've had, again, some non-pecuniary conversations with members of that organisation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lagan. And Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. Pretty much the same declaration of non-pecuniary interest as Councillor Channer, but perhaps a bit briefer, because, of course, Essex County Council, as well as Malden District Councils, are beneficiaries of both business rate and council tax income. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Durham. Tara, is there anybody else who has indicated a wish to speak?
And no, Chairman, that is everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 5 is public participation. I can advise that we have not received any submissions from the members of the public to speak. So we move on to item number 6, which is budgetary control, April to September 2020. We move to agenda item 6, budgetary control, found on pages 11 to 24. Member, please note the addendum circulated prior to the meeting in respect to this item of business, found on pages 3 to 4 of the addendum pack. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. I would now ask Mr. Leslie to please present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may notice the presentation of the budgetary control report is perhaps slightly different to the past. The reason is that we're looking at a more risk-based approach, and also an approach that we hope is more transparent and provides a bit more clarity around the budget. I'll talk through the budget in the report, referring to the tables one at a time. So from page 11, table 1, this provides a high-level overview of the budget. You can see that the expenditure there is split roughly half and half between employee costs and non-employee costs. The net service expenditure there at the bottom, that's the amount that's funded mainly from local taxation, council tax, business rates, and also some other items such as general government grants. The forecast variance tab at the moment, caused by the impact of COVID. You can see the income pressures are actually the largest here, although a sizable amount in the non-employee costs as well. If we move on to the next page, to table 2, this provides the top expenditure areas. These 8 items cover nearly 3/4 of the non-employee expenditure there. You can see the refuse and recycling at the top, by far the largest, and a further breakdown of that is available in the appendices. When taking the salaries expenditure and these 8 items of expenditure, that's 87% of the council's expenditure. So hopefully very clearly you can get an understanding of the size of the council's budgets and how it's broken down just by reference to those items. The employees' costs are broken down a bit further in the appendices. As I say, this is something that's a bit of a work in progress. I hope to be able to provide some more information around that as we go forward and start to improve the reporting process. I'll refer on now to the next page, table 3. You can again see the top income areas this time, 13 areas making up 82% of the income. Worth pointing out that car parking income is up there as well. That's obviously been hit by the pandemic, as well as the leisure centre management fee income. Okay. So with these items impacting, I'll refer to table 5 now. You can see that actually the expenditure has been offset largely by the government grants that we've had through from COVID, the income compensation scheme particularly, and also the general COVID grants the government has provided. So a total budget variance shown there in table 5, worth noting that is substantially less than that originally reported at the start, because of the grants that have come through from central government that weren't expected at the time. And finally, just to go on to table 6, a bit further on the report, you can see the impact on the general fund balance. They're projected, still staying well above the 2.6 million minimum level. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. The recommendation set out in the report is as follows: that the members note the contents of the report. If any members wish to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now.
Councillor Wendy Stamp, I'd like to second the motion, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. I will now invite members to make any comments on the report. Tara, who has indicated that they wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Just Councillor Mrs. Channer at the moment, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a query really, because I noted it. I noticed it is a report for noting, and we did have the issue of whereby reports for noting wouldn't go to committee, but would be noted on the agenda, as I was led to understand, at the bottom. I'm just wondering, it might be because the importance of this, but that was my understanding, just about process. So, as I say, it is a report for noting. That was my inquiry really, Chair.
Okay, the reason why it has been brought to committee is because of its importance and to ensure that members are kept informed about the breakdown and the finances of the council. So therefore, as we move forward in terms of setting the new budgets, that we are keeping members informed and also ensuring that they're able to ask any questions. So due to the importance, that's why it's been brought to this committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Durham.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it's obviously a huge concern that we're likely to be £1.5 million shy on our income. 4.5.4, there's an estimate of a reduction of about £200,000 on the tax take. I've just come off another meeting at Essex where this subject has come up, and I'm just wondering, from what I've heard, the reduction in tax takes potentially quite a lot more than anybody was anticipating. I'm just wondering when that figure was put in, whether that should be adjusted in the light of more information. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Leslie, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. Yeah, the figures we reflected as more information comes to light. The current figures were based on the collection rates at the time, and that's what's been used to calculate it. So they were based on the most up-to-date figures at the time, but of course will be updated as we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leslie. Are there any other members who would like to speak on this item?
Chairman, Councillor Lagan's indicated he wished to speak.
Okay, Councillor Lagan. Sorry, I missed you.
Thank you, Chair. That's okay, Chairman. There's no problems there at all. Just a couple of quick questions, if I may, for Mr. Leslie. Chris, it's a really excellent report, understandable for those of us that are not gifted in the world of financial management. So I just want to say thank you very much indeed for that. And a question as well on the 2.6 million minimum for the general fund level for my own awareness. Is that a level that's set by government, or is that a level that's set by us as an authority?
Yeah, so that's a level which is set by the council. At the start of the year, Section 151 officer provides a minimum level of recommended reserves for that, and that happens during the budget setting time. So it's down to the council, and each council will obviously have their own risks associated with that.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Lagan? No? Okay.
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Obviously, without COVID, the council finances are stretched currently, and COVID has put that extra pressure onto the finances. And I'd like to thank Mr. Leslie for producing such a detailed and understandable report, which helps us as members understand the situation that the council is facing. Over the coming years, we will have to address how we deal with some of these matters, and hopefully, if we get some more government grants in the next few months, that will assist us in our financial situation currently. So I would now like to move the item for a vote. Can I take this via assent, or would you like a recorded vote on this?
Assent, Chairman, is fine.
Chairman, the recommendations just for noting. Chairman,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with assent.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to note that's Thompson.
Happy to agree. Yeah.
Yeah, noted. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, members. So we now move on to agenda item 7, which is the medium-term financial strategy for 21-22 to 22-23-24. Found, I'm saying lots of numbers, found on pages 25 to 132. Members are reminded that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Mr. Leslie, please can you present the report?
Thank you. I'll just make some brief references to the report. This is part of our commitment to keep bringing forward updated medium-term financial strategies given the uncertainty around COVID at the moment. And since the report was written, we have entered lockdown. So it just shows you how quickly things change. I'll just refer on page 26 to table 1 there, really, which does lay out some of the cost pressures that are facing the council at the moment in future years. You can see from there that it's the inflationary pressures that do continue going forward. And also from the funding side, you can see that there's sort of flat lines there, largely due to reductions in government funding around the new homes bonus. If I refer to the below chart 1 there, I think gives a bit of a graphical representation of the issues ahead as the funding flatlines and the inflationary pressures that staff and non-staffing inflationary pressures continue. I'd just like to give reference there in section 6 on page 27, just to highlight the fact that the uncertainties around COVID, and we have done some work on looking at some possible scenarios. We hope these are more pessimistic scenarios than anything else, but we've looked to try and quantify some of the uncertainties around COVID at the moment. And of course, what we don't know in this report is the funding that may assist with some of these pressures as well. So in terms of the next page from table 5, which was split out those pressures which are due to business as usual, almost those inflationary pressures that continue, and also those COVID pressures. And you can see that there's a balance without the COVID pressures, and then the balance obviously including the COVID pressures. So of course it's quite significant pressures as you would expect, but it's very uncertain at the moment. We don't know what government funding's coming forward for that. And just lastly, I would like to highlight the growth items that have been put forward as well ahead. That's a precursor to the budget setting, so it gives members as much time as possible to engage within those. Just like to highlight that particular one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. So I would now like to put forward the recommendation that the updated medium-term financial strategy for 21-22 to 23-24 as at the 19th of November at Appendix 1 be noted. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video now, unmute your microphone and state your name.
Councillor Wendy Stamp, I'll second that, Chairman, please.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Has anybody indicated that they wish to speak, Tara?
No, Chairman, nobody has.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. So I will speak on this myself then. And one of the things that we need to look at is in terms of Appendix 2, is those are proposals that have been put forward by the officers of the council. So if there are any items on there that we have a query or question about, then this is your opportunity to raise that now. And also in terms of the expenditure that is being put forward by the officers. So again, if there is any recommendations that members would like to put to the officers, they are quite happy, welcome to hear those things. And just had, I can't see it because it's
Councillor Swain, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Swain.
Yes, can I, Chairman, I go back to table 4, a matter of clarification from Mr. Leslie about the assumed impact of COVID in future years. as I understand the table, there are significant, what should we say, shortfalls from the leisure centre management fees stretching into 23-24. But for promenade park activities, this is the zeros presumably imply that we would be back to normal levels of events and income. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Nice and succinct. Does that answer your question, Christopher? Councillor Sway, you happy with that?
Well, yes, I suppose so. As I was thinking, does it involve the same assumptions about utilisation? In other words, it's assuming that leisure centre activity is definitely not back to past levels in any of those years.
That's correct. I mean, it depends. Just expanding, I think, on the leisure centre one. The other one, in terms of the zeros, quite right, the activity back to zero and everything continues. To expand on the leisure centre one, then it's very much an unknown how this will go forward. We've got a vaccine in process, but we just don't know how demand and opening of leisure centres may be impacted on activities. So it's very much a bit of a guesswork behind what could happen around activity.
Yes, it's probably fairly pessimistic assumptions, do you think?
Yeah, very possibly. I certainly hope they are, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leslie. So we now come to
Sorry, Chairman, just
sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Channer. Sorry, yes, I did notice that and I forgot it. Councillor Channer.
Just hold on a minute. I'm trying to go through the two things here. It's quite difficult.
Okay.
The paperwork and everything. So I'm really going to Appendix 2 on page 67 when it can come up on my screen as well. And that is Appendix 2, isn't it? I'm doing it from memory now. Yes, it is. So it's Appendix 2. And really, I'll go backtrack if I may to page 66. Can you all hear me? Because it seems like I'm.
Yes,
right. Okay, lovely. I'm getting this issue again with I might have to take them off again. Regarding the digital scheme, I would like to just say I think that's very good, and I can see why we do need that. And certainly, I think with COVID and bearing in mind, hopefully, the vaccinations might come in and do perhaps what they do, so we get back to some normality. But if we don't, then having the digital sort of digitalisation that officers are planning and freeing up the space will be good. But I think that's more on page 65 and then it goes on to 66. Could I just ask on page 66, it says here about service delivery and safeguarding admin. And it says here to allow safeguarding leads to have administration rights in fresh service. I'd perhaps just like to have a clearer understanding of what that means exactly, because as soon as I see about safeguarding and people having access to stuff, I'd just like an expansion on that. And then, Chairman, do you want the next question? Because it goes on to the next page to do with service delivery, or would you like me to stop there?
I think we'll take that question first of all, and Mr. Holmes says he can provide the answer for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, through you. This is actually for the internal team of the council who manage our safeguarding cases. They use a platform, an IT platform, to operate the service and share records. Unfortunately, they don't all have the licenses to be able to do that. So it's a completely contained internal service for operational use. So all of the data sharing is obviously completely appropriate because it is within the council itself.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to ask the next question, Chairman?
Yes, please, Councillor Channer.
Thank you. This is on page 67, service delivery staffing. Now, maybe this is me looking at something the wrong way, but Revs and Ben's specialist, it's the first item, really. And I'm looking at the growth for 21-22. Now, the way that's written, it's going on about £10 or... I don't think you mean £10. I think, are you meaning 10,000? Because then you mentioned 38k. So I just thought if we're talking 38k and then 100k in the end box, perhaps that might be helpful, bearing in mind members of the public probably read this, to sort of keep it uniform, Chairman. That's where I was coming from, because when a member of the public might read that, with a £10 if process improvement.
Bargain.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. So I've just been a bit pedantic, I guess, but actually I was meaning that, because I think I know what you meant, but I just think it's helpful that we make sure it does say 10,000, or it's clear that it is 10,000.
Can we just clarify that it's not £10 and it is 10,000?
Yes, apologies for that. It's not £10, it's 10,000.
Yes. Sorry, Chairman, but I just thought,
right,
because when I first read it, I mean, it confused me a bit. I guessed I knew, but I thought I would make sure my thinking was correct. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Channer. I have a question on, Councillor Stamp. I will give way to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine just a query, really. Looking at the same as Councillor Channer, page 67, service delivery staffing, the project manager role. Can anybody give me some more information on that? When will it start? Who will they directly report to? Will it be Mr. Butcher? What projects have we got on the go? Do we have any evidence? Because that's quite a large sum of money at the moment. Believe me, I understand we've got to get income coming in, and I'm all for it. But I'm not actually just over the moon that we're going to splash all that cash without. I want to see what value we're going to get as a council coming in for that post. Oh, I think it's going to be Mr. Holmes, actually, who's going to speak to me there.
Camera.
Chairman, if I can help with the answer.
Yeah, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you. Yes, obviously we have a number of commercial projects which Mr. Butcher is working on. What we're actually looking to do is to put an officer in post to actually enable some of those projects to take forward to business case and beyond, because clearly we've got a number that need some detailed work to bring them up to ready for members to approve the business case. And this officer will help Mr. Butcher get those projects in to that position and then start some of those projects off. It's a very busy team at the moment, but there's also a lot of detailed work. And what we need to do is identify some of the front running projects, put some time in, develop the business cases and get them to signed off for members. So that's really the intention of that post.
Brilliant. Chairman, can I have a supplementary to Mr. Holmes, please?
You can, of course, Councillor Stump.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, would the council, would the projects be coming to council in the interim, or will it just be a free reign that you're going to be working on them? Is it going to come to council or the whichever committee it needs to come to be discussed? It just concerns me that it may just happen, and I think we really, as a whole council, need to be involved in whatever commercial strategies that we're going to take forward. Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Chairman, yes, through you. Absolutely. All of those projects will come to the appropriate committee. So this is actually about laying the foundations and putting the work in to actually get to a committee or council to actually put that business case to them. So yes, I can give you that assurance.
Excellent. Well, I definitely support it then. Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. And Councillor Stamp stole my question. So that was
terribly sorry,
Chairman. I can see that there's no other members who wish to speak. So can I move to assent in terms of this item?
Noted.
Agreed. Noted.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we move to agenda item 8, year-end Treasury outturn report 2019-20, found pages 133 to 142. A reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function. I will come to you in turn. Mr. Leslie, again, please present the report.
Thank you. The report provides an overview of the Treasury activities for the previous financial year. It shows the type of deposits that were made, summary of the economic activity, also a report from our Treasury advisors as well, talking about those issues and also predicting or trying to predict the uncertainties around the future economic outlook going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Leslie?
Chairman, nobody's indicated they wish to raise a question. Thank you.
Okay. So the recommendation is that members review the Treasury Act report for compliance. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video and I can't say unmute. Unmute your microphone and state your name now.
I'll do that. So Councillor Wendy Stamp. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stamp. So nobody wishes to speak on this particular item? Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Report noted.
Okay, can I have an assent for that?
Noted.
Noted, thank you.
Noted.
Thank you very much. So we move to agenda item 9, 2012-22 fees and charges policy, found on pages 143 to 150. Members are reminded that if you wish to speak on this item, please make known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Mr. Leslie, please can you present the report?
Okay. Yeah, this is an annual report on the fees and charges policies that come to the committee every year. You'll note there's been minimal changes from past years. There has been a change in terms of the parking, just to make sure that the council's policy is consistent with its actions, certainly around supporting Christmas parking, etc. around that. So there's an alignment of policies taking place there. That's probably the one to note.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Leslie. So I move the recommendation that the committee considers and reviews the suggested fees and charges policy set out in Appendix A for 21-22 and that adopts a set of policies for the officers to follow. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. So I have no seconder.
For the purpose, Chairman, for
Yes.
the purposes of discussion, I will second it. But of course, there are some. I have some comments and proposals to make on the basis of it.
Of course. Are you happy to second at this stage, Councillor Swain?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I will now invite members to make any comments on the report. Can I please be advised who has said they wish to speak?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Lagan, Councillor Swain and Councillor Mrs Channer have indicated they wish to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report and obviously the set of policies that has been agreed by Council and is in existence at the moment. If members remember going back to the previous review of wharfage, which is contained in Appendix A on page 147. I spoke about the reluctance to increase wharfage on our Thames sailing barge fleet kept in Malden because of the potential pressures that were on them pre-COVID. Now, I completely understand and get the pressures on us as a local authority with regard to fees and benefits, but I think we really do need to look at this somewhat differently in more of a supportive way to help keep the barges and the revenue coming through from the exceptionally high numbers of people that are attracted to the town for these historic vessels. At the moment, Topsail Charters, for instance, and other barges are paying £1,072.50, including VAT, per quarter for mooring at Malden Quay, which the charges were basically looked at on economic parity with other marinas in the area, which the barge owners have long said is not, you're not measuring eggs with eggs, it's not parity, because we have no barges at marinas and marinas have facilities. And we don't provide any real facilities for the barges, they basically do everything themselves. Topsail Charters, for instance, their income this year has dropped by 70%. And Malden District Council, who have barges on every single piece of documentation, and it's written everywhere, hasn't supported the barges in any way, shape or form by offering discounts. The loss of income that's also been generated by the SB Reminder and the Kitty, basically not being housed and working on the quay, has in effect actually lost us more money than what we were standing to gain. So I think we need to have a real good look at this, and I would like to look at the barges to be able to have a 50% reduction in the current fees for the year 2021-2022, and then a review at the end of that financial year. And I'd also like, because obviously the small amount of revenue that's going to be lost to the council, I would like to propose that we ask the officers, Steve Butcher as our commercial manager, and the team that's involved there, to look at other ways of actually gathering funds and charges in that can be there to support that shortfall. You've got to understand, members, that these barges work incredibly hard to generate the revenue and are exceptionally expensive to maintain. And I don't think that we've done them any good. In fact, with the previous leadership offered to have 2 meetings with the barge owners as part of the previous recommendation, and those haven't happened. And that's incredibly discourteous to the barge owners and the business people that they actually are. So, members, I would say that the majority of the fees and charges policies I'm reasonably content with, because they make sense. But this one does need a special laser light lookout, and we should support the barges by giving them a reduction for 2021-2022 and then reviewing after that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Would one of the officers like to come back and make a comment about the wharfage fees?
Yes, I'm happy to comment. I mean, I think at the moment this is only the policy, and the fees for next year haven't been set. So I think, Councillor Lagan, there is an opportunity to feed that into the report process. We're actually putting that together at the moment with the finance team. So I think with the policy, I think that remains as per agreed. But yes, I think there's an opportunity for a discount. I know you mentioned Top Sale previously. I have spoken with them on a number of occasions, but unfortunately haven't been able to meet with them on a face-to-face basis. But have spoke with them just last week actually. So we are in constant communication with them, and we have offered support during COVID, during the COVID period, the first lockdown. And that was available to all of our kind of leases and rentals and commercial income, but that wasn't forthcoming. They chose not to take it at this time, but wanted to remain with that offer on the table. So we do continue to work with them and engage with them, and I'm happy to discuss the appropriate fee that we set for next financial year.
So I think when we set up the finance working, sorry, Councillor Lagan.
I just want to say thanks to Steve, because obviously there is the policy, but I also strongly would like the thinking from the officers and supported by the members, if members choose to do so, to support it with that actual level of reduction to be built in, because obviously, Steve, you've got to look at the finance and balance in the book. So I appreciate that dialogue you've had.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, and it's what Mr. Holmes suggests as well, that when we set up the finance working group, this would be something that the working group can look at. And also, I would be very happy, along with any officer, to have a joint meeting with the barge owners to discuss things for the future and how we will work with them in the future in terms of those fees. And I think that would be something that would be good to set up, as an officer and member meeting.
Yeah, agreed.
Just checking it. No, so you're not making an amendment to it at all, are you, Councillor Lagan?
Well, no, if the recommendation of the report is just to recommend the policies, what I don't want us to do is recommend the policies and lose the devil in the detail. I want to be very clear and would like it minuted that we would go back to a member working group and actually have to look at these charges with the discounts in mind as being brought forward, because obviously there has to be a review to look at how that could be replaced without, if I say it, penalisation of any other users or any other groups.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lagan. Councillor Channer.
I'm coming, Chairman.
It's all right.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. That's right. You can hear me. Lovely. I was just looking at my pages. Right. OK. I'm going to page, like Councillor Lagan, 147 and on 148. Can I just say a general thing? I think it might be sort of following on from the way that Councillor Lagan's putting a question. He's got specific. I understand we obviously want to retain a lot of existing policies, and I appreciate very much the importance of fees and charges for income basis to the council. In officers presenting this, or the policies as we see now, has any consideration been given bearing in mind COVID? Because there's a wealth of policies in here and some of them will affect business. Was consideration given to that fact, bearing in mind the COVID legacy we all probably are aware of and going to have, and bearing in mind unemployment, businesses failing and other things? Was there consideration to the legacy of COVID, if you like? And then, Chairman, just I probably should know this, but and I'm afraid, I apologise that I don't, but I just want to know, on page 147, it refers to a third one down, off-street car park in Malden Town, maximise income, no free school drop-off permits. And it's got about disabled badge holders, and it says no free parking on bank holidays. And it says here, amend existing policy, maximise income, but take into account the need to support local businesses. Great. No free school drop-off permits. Then we move down to 168, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about the 8th one down, or 7th one down, parking permits for schools, chargeable services, charges made to schools for parking in MDC-owned car parks. Now, I just want to clarify and make sure I do know the difference between those, or is there one? Because I can remember debates within the chamber, both through the old Committee of Finance and the council, regarding drop-offs for mum, when mums want to drop children off. And it was at one time we were going to do away with that. There was a bit of furore, and then we brought in the permits so they could get into the car parks, if you like, and utilise them. So what is the difference? So I just understand clearly between those two policies. If you can see, to me, they actually could be seen as one and the same, but I'm not quite sure what off-street parking means when we are talking about our car parks, it would appear. And then we're saying no free drop-off permit, and then we have the charges there anyway, because there are permits, I think, given to the schools or for the mums.
Thank you, Councillor Chana. Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, with regard to the general question around COVID, well, obviously these are the council's policies regarding its fees and charges for all of its land and buildings, and obviously in applying those policies and looking at the fees that are set, there is an opportunity at that time to take into account any COVID implications. Obviously, we're looking to support charities and other organisations going forward. So I think the general policies are set in terms of the principle that we charge, for instance, on some of our sites, is how we then apply that in terms of the charge itself going forward. So I think that's where we get the flexibility. And with regard to the car parking, yes, we do make a charge now to the schools for the permits. So there used to be kind of free permits that we issued, not quite on demand, but very nearly. But actually now we've actually made that through the schools themselves, and we do make a charge for it, because although they are using the car parks twice a day for a period of time, that they're making a contribution to the costs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holmes. To answer your question,
Well, Chairman, might I come back? The two the policy fees and charges I mentioned, one on page 167, one on page 68.
Yeah.
Are they one and the same?
No, they're two separate items. So
so that's what I need to be clear on. What you mean by no free car parking permits with the when it mentions the disabled, and then we go because it says we need to amend that because there's to be no free parking, so we're obviously removing that, and then we go down where we're mentioning the charging policy. So what is the distinction between those two areas in terms of the schools?
So from what I understand is that we are, for those people using the schools, they have to pay for a permit to go into the car park. What we're doing in terms of car parking and off-street parking is reviewing our fees, and that's something we discussed at the COVID-19 reset meeting this week. So therefore we will come forward with new ideas about how we charge for parking in our car parks, but there will be no revision of free parking for schools. Is that correct, Mr. Holmes?
That is correct, Chairman.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Chana?
Well, it does, but I think it's, let's put it this way, it's amending it, but to me, we're charging the schools anyway. That's simple. Yeah. They can come in and drop off. So you're saying you're going to amend the other policy because we're looking at saying and no free parking in the car parks, but it does refer to the schools specifically. So I see a bit of contraindication there, if I'm honest. That's the way I read that document.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that.
If you can see where I'm coming from, maybe
Yes,
it's my brain, but I can see a bit of contraindication, or they seem to be one and the same because we do charge. So what are we saying? No free parking. We haven't got it, have we?
No, I think what we're doing is separating those two items, and perhaps that's where the confusion arises.
Where is the free parking currently then? The free
so at the moment we have in the off-street parking, there's free parking in certain bays for 30 minutes that people can park for free. What we are looking at doing is revising those parking fees to be brought forward to council to review how we support businesses, how we ensure that we keep the high street alive, and that will be brought forward to council and to committee next year when we look at the fees and charges for car parking. The permits for people using the schools will remain the same.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to a degree, but if we're saying no free permits for schools, what we're saying then those schools use the free permit, free bays.
If those bays were available, they'd be able to use them, wouldn't they?
Well, yes, but I think it's specific about the schools saying
so there is no free
permits.
So there is no free permits for the schools. They have to pay for the permit to use the car parks.
Well, they do, yes, currently.
Yeah, and that we are at the moment saying that policy is staying the same.
Well, I understand that. That's why I'm saying the one on page 6-7. I'm sorry to argument about this, but it does say no free use of whatever the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't, because we charge anyway. They come into our car parks and they have to have the permits up front to allow the drop off and whatever.
Maybe it's just the way the policy is worded.
That's I find it confusing, Chairman.
Okay.
My brain probably, but that's how I find it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Channer. Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes.
Could you switch off your camera and mic, please, Councillor Channer?
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Swain, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes. I want to refer to three of the items, and in fact, one of them was wharfage, and the policy is to set fees as comparable or in relation to alternative locations, and I think from what Councillor Lagan has implied, there really aren't any identical ones. So it's very difficult to find a comparator for Malden, but I think that to give Mr. Butcher perhaps a rationale or a mechanism, if any sort of comparative wharfage fees are, calibrated to the limited time that the barges have available for use of the wharf, might take into account the comments that Councillor Lagan has made in reducing the nominal level of wharfage fee. So I think take into account the time available for use of the wharf. My main point concerns Promenade Park. The policy says the aim for overall 60% cost recovery for Promenade Park, with car parking being the key contributor. To my mind, Promenade Park, and I thought somebody did say that it was actually supposed to generate net income. And to my mind, there's something wrong if Promenade Park isn't covering the costs of its operation. I think particularly car parking should cover its costs. And I wonder whether the problem here is not just income, but how we allocate the costs for running the Promenade Park. And I wonder whether there's a cost allocation issue here. My third one relates to the pop-up stalls, charges for pop-up stalls, which is in the care of the Director of Service Delivery. But I do hope that he will coordinate fully with the commercial manager to ensure we get the maximum income benefit from these pop-up arrangements. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. And is there a particular question that you want answered, Councillor Swain, on that?
Well, they're really comments as to how, My question is there a cost allocation problem really relating to the allocation of the determination of whether Promenade Park contributes net revenue or not?
Yeah. Okay.
I think in practice this policy should aim at fully covering at least full recovery of costs for Promenade Park.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Mr. Holmes or Mr. Butcher?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think you're right. We do need a bit more clarity, and I think this is something we'll be looking to do. I think with the financial year we've just had, it's been very difficult to manage those costs and allocate them and apportion them in the appropriate areas. But it is something we're looking to do going forward, to have that appropriate income amount. And in previous years, the Prom Park would have achieved more than enough income to kind of wash its own face in terms of the cost it incurs. So yeah, it's something that it's been difficult to do this year, and we'll have suffered a loss this year because of the splash park, because of the reduction in car parking and etc. But it's something to look to do to the future. And yes, in response to the third point, yes, I mean Richard and I do work very closely to make sure that we achieve the best possible income from the concessions and the pop-ups available to us. But again, that's something that has been very difficult to achieve this year, but looking to improve on next year.
To answer your question, Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to refer back to the wharfage one, whether any comparative information you have should be looked at in the light of the limited amount of time that people using the wharf have to actually use the Blackwater.
Yeah, I think when I think this time last year, I think the benchmarking exercise was done on other wharfage that could take the barges, but not necessarily had barges in mud berths for them. But I'd be really keen to take this to the members' finance working group as an opportunity to explore the best way to get that charge right for the barges.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Thank you, Councillor Swain. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to just reassure Councillor Swain. Chris Leslie, myself and another two councillors had a meeting the other day, and Prom Park was actually mentioned. And Mr. Leslie is going to look at having a conversation or arranging a meeting with Mr. Butcher and a few others about looking into the areas that's just been identified by Councillor Swain. There is a lot of work that could be done, but I'm totally on board with what Mr. Butcher's just said. It has been a difficult year because of COVID. Nobody could foresee it coming, but rest assured these areas that need looking at have been identified by the officers and the councillors, not just this administration but the previous one, and we will be certainly working hard to reassure Councillor Swain and the residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. And yes, I'd just like to second that. We need to ensure that we look after and support our community and what represents our community. And I'm sure as we move forward, we'll be able to work with the wharfage fees and with the barge owners to come up with the right solutions for everybody. So I think it's everybody who wanted to speak. So can I take that again as an assent and make that report noted?
Noted.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, members.
Noted.
So we now move to item number 10, which is capital project bids for 2012-22. That's 21-22. I didn't even read the notes right then. Found on pages 151 to 192. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within the meeting. I will then come to you in turn, and please keep your points clear and succinct. Mr. Leslie, could you please present the report?
Okay. So the report sets out the capital bids that will come forward as part of the capital programme for next year. Again, this is coming to committee ahead of January to allow time for proper engagement around these matters. So again, this is one more for noting, but to allow sufficient time for members to properly consider the items ahead of January and having input into that. So really just happy to take any questions.
And are there any other officers who'd like to speak about any of the capital expenditure at this stage? Or was it just Mr. Leslie at this particular point? Oh, got a couple of you pop up. Mr. Butcher, I saw you first. Your mic's on. Your mic's off, Mr. Butcher.
Only that we're happy to answer any questions that councillors might have in relation to the capital requests we've submitted.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Butcher. Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman. And obviously, just to point out where we've identified projects as being essential or a service improvement or commercial, and you'll see those are in the project categories. So we've broken them down into the various sites and then given members a view on priorities as well. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. And I have Councillor Durham as the first person to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a very quick question to the lead finance officer. Could you just tell me what our earmarked and unallocated reserves are at present, please?
Thank you. So we've got an estimated in terms of the general fund period, we've got about 4 million projected by the end of the year in terms of the general fund, which is the unearmarked. In terms of the earmarked, I haven't got it in front of me, but we're looking at about, I think, probably around the same amount, about 4 million, but apologies, right in front of me at the moment. So happy to take offline or come back in a minute.
It would be interesting to, yes, it would be interesting to know, because when the local government reform was being discussed and figures were being exchanged between all districts and the county, that the levels for reserves, both sets, were considerably lower than that. So you can come back to me at a later date, it's absolutely fine, but I would like to know what the exact state of play is, please.
Yeah, absolutely fine. And we did actually input into the LGR work for that, so it's no problem.
Chairman,
could I come back? Can I come back to you, because you weren't next, Councillor Channer?
No, it's just on that, Chairman. Will all the committee have that figure supplied to them as well, Chairman?
Mr. Leslie?
Yes, it's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leslie. Councillor Skeens.
Yes, thank you. A couple of items from page, excuse me, page 152, or let me see if I've got. Yes, the River Bailiff new vehicle listed at the bottom of vehicle and plant replacement. First of all, is the River Bailiff still Nigel Harmer? Has that changed? And why does he need a new vehicle? That's the first question. And the second question is rivers on the same page, Burnham on Crouch houseboats berth. I don't think that's in my neck of the woods, i.e. this West Quay. I think this refers to the new houseboat berths which are being proposed down at the War Memorial. £120,000 seems a lot. I was just wondering what the background to that was.
Okay. So what I would suggest then is that if we can keep to the essential items first of all, and then we'll come to the commercial project as a separate item with Mr. Butcher. So we'll start with the questions about the bailiff's vehicle. Who'd like to answer that question?
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer that question for you. Yes, the River Bailiff still is Nigel Harmer. The need for a new vehicle is around particularly moving the navigation buoys. We've also changed our vehicle fleet around slightly, so the vehicle that Nigel has had for the last few years is now with another team. So we're looking to replace that vehicle if possible. Okay, new one in point.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And we had Councillor Channer. Did you have another question?
Yes, Chairman. My first one was really just bearing in mind what Councillor Durham had asked, and that's been confirmed. The whole committee will get that figure. Yes, it's to do with page 151 on the project list, and it's the employee laptops replacement rolling programme, 47,000. Can I just ask what we do with our old laptops, please?
Is that Mr. Holmes who'd answer that?
Happy to answer that, Chair.
Mr. Leslie, thank you.
Yep. So currently we do have some that are redundant in terms of outdated, and we're going through sifting through some of the IT stock to see what we can do with it. In terms of any disposals, that will be in accordance with the contract procedure rules around that, so we'll follow that, which does require it to be, I believe, firstly offered to the parishes in accordance with that, and then to be disposed of in terms of best value moving forward.
Oh, all right then, Chairman. I'll tell you why I was a bit naughty, possibly. Only, and I declared my interest early non-pecuniary. I don't know if I'm moving into pecuniary now, but Essex County Council have a programme whereby supplying laptops to, rejig laptops or whatever to young people, bearing in mind with the COVID, giving young people the opportunity to have access. That's all I just wondered. Okay. So I wanted to make sure we were getting the best benefits out of perhaps the reusage, and hearing it goes to the parish is a good one. So yeah. I just wondered if there was a big write-off figure, £47,000 to do the rolling programme, but in write-off terms, okay, I appreciate some are old. I just wanted to make sure perhaps if they can be utilised elsewhere. And, as you just said, Mr. Leslie, about best value and other things, hopefully they can be. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I refer to page 158. There's a lovely picture of a green tractor on agricultural tyres. Are we going into agriculture now, or should that be on grass tyres, or is that the size of tractor we're looking at, please?
Mr. Wilson.
As with some previous reports, we use an example picture of what we're looking to procure.
Okay, fine.
So yes, we do use it largely for grass work and for mowing. So
not
it won't have that size tractor.
Want different tyres then? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That's not the specific vehicle that we will be procuring. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually agree with Councillor Durham. I think it'd be quite important for us to have the reserves figure, the general reserves and the earmarked. I totally agree with the essential works. I have got a couple of questions, though, about the service improvement for the gym expansion for the Dengie 100. I think it seems a little bit, unless you build it in for a bit later on in the year, I don't see that we should be spending that sort of money, or it's going to be programmed in later. I don't know the exact detail because it's closed. It's costing the council a lot of money at the moment anyway, and I don't think that might be appropriate at the time. A couple of questions for Matt Wilson, if that's okay, Chairman. The Riverside information boards and signage, I thought that was an allocated budget previously in previous years, or it came out of a pot of money, and so did the car parking. I can remember us having issues about the car parking, and it was never finished properly, Mr. Wilson. I think you'll agree when we went round, it was all loose stone. It could be in the wrong area. I'm happy to be corrected. But can you confirm if the money has been allocated before, if this is new council money that we're actually talking about allocating for the future? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Wilson.
Certainly. Yes, there was a capital allocation 3 years ago for the signage within Riverside Park. Through the financial processes last year, that was returned to the capital pot. This is a resubmission of the bid so that we can get those signs back in. Okay. So it's the same project renewing on that one. And the car park it's obviously for a larger sum. We did spend some repairs and renewals money on the car park, lower car park in Riverside Park, again, about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was about £8,000 at that time. This is much larger amount of money to actually fix the underlying problems within that one and provide a better base surface.
Chairman, can I come back, please?
Yes.
Are you actually going to be able to do it where you put lines and markings so we can actually have allocated spaces this year, this time, Mr. Wilson, please?
There will be marked spaces within it, yes. Whether it will be a hard sealed surface or whether we will use a loose surface as we have in the prom, that can have allocated parking spaces. That's still to be determined depending on costs.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I'm only concerned because I'm sure some members may be aware that we've had the racing cars finding places to ruin our beautiful parks in Burnham last night, doing donuts and everything, and I just wouldn't really want to give them another area to go and burn their rubber or whatever the saying is at this moment in time. So I think we just need to be careful and think about the possibilities of, you know, don't do something half-heartedly and half the expense that you're going to have to do it again in 2 years or 1 year's time and bring back to this council for another 30 or 35,000. Thank you, Chairman, and Mr. Wilson.
Before I go to Mr. Butcher, could I go to Mr. Leslie, who can come back on the reserves question?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got the figures up in front of myself now. I've managed to get back through the pack and find them. They're on page 50 now. And at the end of this year, as I said, general fund about 4 million, and in right reserves, as I said, about 4 million. That's on page 50 of the report on the MTFS. So yeah, apologies, I've managed to go back and find it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Mr. Butcher.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was just in response to the leader's question around the gym expansion at the Dengie 100 Sports Centre. So I know we've previously spoken about the rugby club undertaking some work there and taking over the bar area. So what this investment is, and it doesn't fit into any of the categories we've got, it would actually be an invest to save project whereby we would invest about £30,000. We could expand the gym at the Dengie, but also with the rugby club taking over the new expanded bar area, we would actually end up paying less to Places Leisure to run that. I appreciate it's a service improvement, but we didn't have a category for that as a kind of invest to save money type approach. But that's the one we've spoken about previously.
I'm more than happy to support that, but when it said gym expansion, you know, what you just described is a little bit different, but thank you for clarity. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The query I have is about the item for the new Malvern Prom for the service improvement of a new improved skate park for £100,000. That seems an awfully large amount of money, and I'm very much for improving the resources for the youth of the town, but that does seem to be quite a high figure, and considering we have a skate park that's well used and well visited down there, it's just something that stuck out to me that along with the River Bailiff's cost of his vehicle was something that sort of made me go, really? So if you could give a bit more information about why that sum is so high, please.
Mr. Butcher.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Lagan, we've looked at other escape. Well, the reason this is on the list is we've had a number of public inquiries. Councillor Mays has asked us if we could look into other recent developments in other districts and boroughs just to see what the cost of one would be. We appreciate it's a service improvement. It would be a whole new skate park that would go in there. But you're quite right. We do have a skate park. It is aging, and it will need additional work to it in the future years. But this was more of a request, like I say, from Councillor Mays and from a number of requests from the public to saying, would council consider investing in something like this?
Okay, so just through you to you, Chair, that it's not a done deal. It's a bid. No. Thank you.
Yeah, these are all things that we can make a decision on tonight. Decide on where we want to spend any particular money and whether we postpone any of these particular items. Councillor Helm, you still have your hand up. Is that your legacy hand? Thank you. Councillor Swain. And Councillor Swain, can you please put your comments in the meeting chat rather than the chairman chat, so then it's easy for me to see it?
I see. I'm having, yes, well, I have to really putting in any chat, actually. It seems we're not just concentrating on the essential ones, but under essential, it does seem to me there's an awful lot of vehicles we're trying to buy, and I would like those looked at to see whether we can put off one or two of them to next year or a future year. On the Prom Park ones, I'm assuming that the idea for a new skate park would be in the same location as the existing one. And similarly, with the galleon, which would be most unfortunate to lose that, it's a very popular item for young children. I hope that, well, if it can't be replaced with another galleon, that it will be something that will fulfil the same sort of function for the same age range. As to these large items, the skate park and the houseboat, should we, and in view of what the Mr. Leslie has shown previously about the rundown in our capital reserves for projects, are these not cases where we should think seriously about borrowing for these large items, so that we do still have something in the kitty for smaller items over the next 1 or 2 years? The only a point about the men's shed, which I agree is a very good project. I don't know whether the picture shown in the proposal is the sort of building that's envisaged, but it does seem very large. And is there an issue with security, the location? The other thing is the Prom Park pathway entrance. This could be, as is noted, an issue affecting the trees. I wonder if we could look at the possibility of simply delineating a pedestrian path at the side. The road is wide enough, I think, for single line traffic and a pedestrian pathway marked on the road.
So I think some of these particular measures, especially the non-essential ones, can be taken as part of the working group. So I think if we focus on what expenditure we need to decide tonight, then some of these items can be looked at the working group and brought back to the committee at a later stage. So a lot of these questions, I think, Councillor Swain, can be discussed as part of the working group.
Yes, I suppose then my point would really be to suggest that something on the vehicle fleet should be postponed until next year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swain. Councillor Durham, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's on this subject. Thank you, Chairman. Just going back to what Councillor Channer alluded to, the initiative that's being done to refurbish laptops. They have used an awful lot from Essex, but other authorities as well. And I was a bit surprised that we haven't been approached, because they're actually using a Malden company for the refurbishment. So 200 odd computers were given out last week to families that can't afford it or need more computers. So and it's a Malden business that's getting that business. I just want to make a quick comment. John Deere tractors are very nice tractors. They're very expensive tractors. But the dealer is based in Colchester. Have we looked at getting a price from a New Holland dealer who is in our district? Let's keep the money as close to home as we possibly can. And do we have to purchase outright? Why can we not lease these high value capital items? I certainly leased all the tractors and things when I was buying them.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Mr. Holmes, you said you'd be able to answer some of these questions on vehicles.
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Leslie to talk about leasing arrangements. I think, as we said before, that is just an indicative photo. So yes, we will go out to procurement for a tractor. We'll be looking to source locally if we can, and obviously value for money for the council. I prefer not to remove vehicles from the list till next year. There are operational reasons why we've have looked at vehicles, but I've already asked that we do a review of the numbers to see if we can actually mix some of the fleet around. So perhaps if members agree to have that working group again, we'll look at that in a little bit more detail, and then members can consider it as part of the round that comes in January, if that's okay.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, Chairman, thank you. I was just, in fact, typing in the chat. My points are either going to be looked at later as part of the working group, or they've just been answered in terms of the leases. So thank you. There's no need for me to say anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Skeens, if I come back to you, because you had a question about the jetty in Burnham, which would be to Mr. Butcher.
Yes, just before that, to a point about skate parks and things like that. We are being very Malden focused here. and I think we need to, before we start spending 100,000 plus on a new skate park, where there's a perfectly good one in Malden. There are projects in Burnham and no doubt in other areas where I think it would be popular and indeed right that we thought carefully about those, and I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to put anything into this budget. I'm just concerned about that because there was great talk about refurbishing the Burnham ramps, which are mentioned in here. And I came up with a quote from a professional company, which I believe arrived at Malden and with Mr. Wilson. But I've never heard anything since, except there was a moment when there was likely to be some 106 money a year or so ago, but that hasn't arisen. So I am interested in making sure that we balance our provision of facilities and don't make it too Malden centric, because that upsets everybody else in the district. And onto the houseboats, I don't quite understand the costs. You've got £120,000 as a capital expense. I presume this is the cost of building a floating pontoon of some sort, or maybe a jetty. I'm not really sure how and why that's split into ongoing costs over the next 6 years. I don't quite understand that. And also with that figure, that's quite a lot of money to get back from moorings where I'm not quite sure what you're going to be charging, but it sounds like a lot. So I'd be interested to understand the thinking behind the houseboat, the 4 houseboat berths that are being considered down at the War Memorial.
Thank you, Councillor Skeens, Councillor Butcher, and Councillor Mr. Butcher even, and Mr. Wilson. I made you councillors now.
Chair, if I can take on the skate park concern of Councillor Skeens, yes, there is a Section 106 pot that is due to come in from a local development within Burnham. The maintenance officer and I have been out on site in the last month to discuss where some of the projects that could be covered, which include the skate park within Riverside Park. So it's still on our list. It's still on our agenda.
It's specifically specifically the BMX track. I'd sent over probably a couple of years now a quote from a professional company who had done similar work in Chelmsford. I'll send that again for you to have a look at. Might be worth considering.
The maintenance officer and I have discussed a pump track effect similar to the one at Great Baddow that you shared there.
Yes,
before.
that's right. Yes.
But also the skate park itself and potential expansion and replacement of play equipment in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Butcher.
Yeah, if I can just respond, thank you, Chair. If I can just respond on the houseboat berths, this is one of the first commercial business cases that we've pulled together. So behind what you're seeing in the report, there is a business case that sits behind that has some robust financial analysis and assumptions in it. We're probably being cautious on the costs, but that will include the pontoon, a new walkway, and all utility connections, including wastewater, which isn't necessarily required for the berths at the moment, but it's something we would like to install for the future berths. We have a return on investment pitched in between year 5 and year 6 for this £120,000, and this is based on roughly about a £500 berth per month. But we have done that on a worst case, best case, and likely case scenario. So we've done various models to see when we will get our money back from this investment. But in essence, I mean, this will be turning capital money into revenue income for the council. And long after we've got the return on investment, then we'll continue to generate revenue income for many, many years to come. I think there's a small amount of maintenance that we've included on there, which I think is about £1,000 every couple of years. Again, this isn't a type of project that I'm necessarily an expert in, but I'm working with Matt Wilson and Nigel Harmer, yeah, we feel like it's a good commercial opportunity for the council to follow.
I would just say that's £6,000 per boat per year. Is that right? Have I got that? £500 per month for what?
For the berth.
For the berth.
Yes. For a single berth or for all 4 berths?
For a single.
for a single. So that's £6,000 a year, roughly, isn't it? So that's quite high for a houseboat berth, I have to say. But if you think the market's there for it, then I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Skeens. We believe it is. Like I say, this is a bold project and a quite an exciting project for me and my colleagues. But there will be a little bit of give and take, and we won't know what the demand is until we're fully built. But we are proposing a really nice scheme down there, and I'd be more than happy to show you some of the details on that and any of the other Burnham on Crouch ward members.
I'll be delighted to see them. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. I will now go to Councillor White, as she's not asked a question previously. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I've got a bad reception, so I can't turn my video on. I also have a few concerns relating to the houseboat berths. I mean, I really like the idea of them with the heritage that we have. However, I'm concerned that the maintenance charges are very, very low. As we all know, the damage water does to anything that's anywhere near it. I think that needs a review. And I also think alternative that the estimated charges are very high, bearing in mind we have quite a lot of boats, and admittedly it's in Scotland, but we also have berths for boats. And although it's a different area, the charges are very, very different. And I would have thought that we'd have accounts from other similar houseboat suppliers to actually compare the charges before doing the business plan, because I would expect that they are based on fact rather than complete projecture. And I would be surprised that if we get that much money, unless it's including all utilities and disposal of sewage, etc. Because most people have boats because of the mobile lifestyle and because of the freedom it gives them. And generally, they wouldn't want to pay a mortgage cost on a boat berth. They're my concerns. Were they fact-based? Where were these facts taken from? Because we should be based them on hard facts before we lay out the money against the taxpayer. And what are the associated maintenance costs with the projects that have been reviewed before pricing up our project? Because I think they're very light.
And Councillor White, Mr. Butcher.
Yes, thank you, Councillor White. We have done some due diligence and some benchmarking. We feel that there is the demand there. We have had several offers already. In fact, we've had one offer for a 10-year for 2 berths up front to the tune of £100,000. And I appreciate that's there's a long way to go from an offer verbally to actually having a written contract for that. But our understanding and from Nigel Harmer is that there are a lot of houseboats looking for berths that are being forced out of London, and the proposition at Burnham on Crouch would be very appealing to them.
Councillor White, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, if I might come back, but have we actually, although if we have 2 from London, that would be fantastic to encourage people into our district. And yes, I agree, Burnham would be a good place to have them, but we mustn't price out locals. And can you tell me how it compares to the mooring charges for houseboats in places like Hawthorne and Mayland? And also where the maintenance charges are compared with? What are the comparable charges for other moorings? This is my concern, is that it just, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I think it's spectacularly like the maintenance, because I know personally that maintenance charges for anything to do with water is very high. And I would just like it to tell me we've taken studies from 5 Essex houseboat mooring companies, and these are their charges, and that's what their maintenance have been in year 1, year 3, year 6.
So if I can just respond, Councillor White, I think we have done that comparison piece of work. I don't have it to hand, but as I said earlier, I'm more than happy to take any councillors through the business case and the work that we've done so far. And I take on board your concerns with the maintenance. And if you, I mean, as I said, this isn't an area of my expertise, and if you've got some knowledge on the maintenance and fees that you think we should be prudent to include, I'd be more than happy to include those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Butcher. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you. That's not a problem, but I would like to have these reports before we get to the budgetary meeting, because having them afterwards is a bit unhelpful.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chair. I'm just going to actually ask Mr. Holmes, because he obviously wants the vehicles, and I think for very good reasons. Are we going to look at electric vehicles, please? We're not going to go for petrol or diesel, are we? Are we actually going to look at, if we are going to invest in vehicles? I'm sure we need to actually follow what's going to be our own climate strategy, or what's coming from central government, because they're all going to be phased out, but I think in 2030. So have we looked at that, please? Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, we will be reviewing our fleet, and absolutely we will look to see what's most appropriate. I think some of the vehicles that we're replacing actually are slightly more difficult to do as an electric vehicle, so they carry grass cutting equipment, and there are larger vehicles that we have. But absolutely, we've got some small vans which will be coming up, things are used by our community engagement team, for instance. So when they come up in their lifestyle replacement, then obviously we can look at those. So yes, we will look, and if it's appropriate, we'll look to see if that's possible.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Holmes. I really think it's important. It maybe not just appropriate, is if we can actually start to make a statement. And you can always come back to council if it's going to cost a lot more money and let the members decide. But I really think it's important we start to look at electric vehicles. I know you can't do for the big ones. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Stamp. I think that's everybody's answered question, and I did it wrong. I didn't do the recommendation first. So the recommendation is that the committee has obviously reviewed the project bids set out in Appendix A in preparation to recommend a Miss Councillor Edwards, very quickly, please.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having trouble with the chat. Just going on further from Councillor Stamp's question, and looking at the latest information coming out regarding the 2030 electric vehicles, one of the things we are lacking, perhaps in investment, or should be thinking about, are charging points. That's the big sticking point, I think. Thank you.
Okay, and obviously we do have charging points at the council offices, so that that might help us in terms of that. Yeah, we can install them in perhaps on the prom or somewhere like that.
There's one there, and there's one in Lidl, but that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, did you want to respond at all to that?
Just to say that obviously we're looking at our climate strategy. We recognise that there's a need not only for the council but obviously for our customers in car parks. So absolutely, we are looking to see what we can do with that as well.
I think Councillor Lagan, did you cancel your question that it had been answered?
I did, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I go back to the recommendation that the committee reviews the project bid set out, which is what we have done, in preparation to recommend a 21-22 capital programme at the Strategy Resources Committee in January 21 for approval by the Council in February 2021. Would any member like to second that motion, please? If you could, turn on your video and unmute your microphone.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skeens. So can I take that recommendation via assent?
Yes, agreed.
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 If I could just ask a point, please, Chair.
Yeah, I think you're too late, Councillor Lagan.
I just wanted to be clear on the recommendation.
So the recommendation is. Thank you, Councillor Lagan. The recommendation is that with this, so we've had the discussion now, that will go to the working group. We will come back to the committee in January with the finalised capital expenditure, which we will then agree at that point. And once that's agreed, it will go to council in February.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And Councillor White, as Councillor Thompson's just mentioned, you have a legacy hand. Okay, so item number 11 is the Finance Members Working Group, found on pages 193 to 194. Members are reminded that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Mr. Leslie, please can you present the report?
Thank you, Chairman. put forward a proposal to members about forming a finance working group. I think you may have seen from the reports that have come forward today, there certainly is a lot to discuss for us to consult on, and some questions as well. And it seemed appropriate that there will be a forum for those informal discussions that may not necessarily lend themselves to a committee environment, so that everyone is informed as well as much as possible as we take this forward. So it was really the purpose of us pushing this forward to members, and just to see if you felt that sort of
I'm sorry,
sort of
Chairman. Sorry, Chairman.
Christy,
Mr. Leslie was breaking up. I didn't hear all that.
Do you want to try without your cam on, Mr. Leslie? Might be.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try again. Apologies, I'm sure you didn't miss much, but I'll try again. Just we thought, I want to put this proposal forward to members. Have you seen from today, there's certainly a lot to discuss, and sometimes an informal environment in order to engage members' views and take proposals forward is a good forum for that. You've seen obviously the finances and also the bids have been put through early, so we can get feedback and really want to continue that consultation engagement with members. So I really want to put that forward for yourselves to decide if you felt that was also a good way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. So the recommendation as set out in the report are as follows. Item little 1, that a finance member working group of 6 members be established. Item little 2, that 6 member representatives are appointed to the working group. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name.
I'd like to second that, please, Chairman.
Councillor Skeens, thank you very much. I will now invite members to make any comments on the report. Does anybody have any comments? Councillor Skeens, you got your cam on before you did your typing.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, just simply that this is obviously a very good idea. Just the question is, where do these representatives come from? Do they come from across the council? Are they? But would it make sense to have most of them from the Strategy and Resources Committee, who are familiar with the material? What is the format?
It will be a working group that reports into Strategy and Resources.
Okay, so how do people become? So what happens next?
Next we decide on whether we're going to vote on those recommendations, or we amend those recommendations, and then we will appoint the 6 members to that working group.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just want to say it's an excellent recommendation because, as Mr. Leslie said, there's an awful lot to go through. And I found in the past that there's been so much there you can't get the devil in the detail teased out. So I think this is an absolutely superb recommendation, which I fully support.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan. Any other councillors like to speak? So as chairman, I would like to amend this recommendation that the 6 members are appointed to the working group, and that is balanced with 4 independents and 2 Conservative representatives. Can I have a seconder for that amendment to appointment 2?
I'd second that recommendation, that amendment, Chairman. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. So what I'd like to do is move that to the vote, and I would just want to query in terms of the process. When do we appoint the 6 members? Is it after the vote or before the vote?
Chairman, I would suggest.
I mean, it would be after, because you've got to establish the principle of the working group first.
Okay, so we'll establish the principle of the working group first. So in terms of the recommendation, would you like to do this via recorded vote or via assent?
Chairman, can I just chip it? Can I just ask?
Of course you can.
Whether the independent, the non-aligned or whatever they're called group get any positions on this?
Well, at the moment, I propose that there are 4 independents. It really does depend on whether you want to have 2 Conservative positions or 1 Conservative position and 1 Democratic Alliance group representation. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just so I'm clear on that, you're proposing 4 independents and 2 Conservatives, or 4 independents and 1 Conservative and 1. You're saying the other alternative could be 1 Conservative and 1 DA.
Alliance,
right.
Yeah. Correct, Councillor Channer.
Oh, I was thinking it might be put forward as even Stevens, 3 independents and 3 Conservatives, but obviously not.
So there's a recommendation on the table. Are we saying that we are going to have a vote on that recommendation, or do we take it by assent?
I'm happy to take it by assent, but if anybody else wishes to have a recorded vote, Chairman, that's down to them, but they need to speak up.
So I take that as the silence is that we are taking that via assent, as nobody has asked for a recorded vote. So that recommendation is passed, and I would like from the chair the 4 independents for that working group to be myself, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Stamp and Councillor Swain. So could we have...
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. So can we have the 2 names of the Conservatives nominations?
Well, I would propose myself and Councillor Durham.
Can I politely decline that, Councillor Chan? It's very kind of you, but it's not really my thing.
Okay, in that case, I would propose myself and Councillor White.
I'm happy. Speaking for me, I'm happy with those, Councillor Chan. Thank you.
So just to confirm that we are following correct constitutional procedure, can I have assent for those recommendations first of all?
Agreed.
Agreed. But has Councillor White agreed?
No. Against.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so we have 1 against and the rest are in assent. So Councillor Helmer, are you asking for a recorded vote?
Well, Chairman, I would like...
If I may, Chairman, it
yes,
will make little difference whether I ask for a recorded vote or not, because you've already decided what you're going to do. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Channer.
Well, I was going to say, Chairman, you kept with the 6.
Mm-hmm.
If the Democratic Alliance would like a seat, could we not make it 7? I'm not sure where the figure 6 has come from, really.
I think it came from Mr. Leslie.
Right.
Chairman, I'm happy to support Councillor Channer to amend the working group numbers to 7.
So if we amend the working group members to 7, so...
And I'm happy to second that so that we have a Democratic Alliance on there.
Okay.
Agreed.
So therefore, the recommendation now is that it will consist of 7 members, representatives are appointed to the working group, 4 independents, 2 Conservative and 1 Democratic Alliance.
Yes.
Can I have assent?
And will there be substitutes allowed if members are not allowed to not able to attend the working group?
Is that normal on working groups?
Yes.
I don't get it. Is it?
No.
Yes, there's no reason why not.
I believe that you can in working groups. But
well,
I was asking the question because it wasn't in the report. Sorry, Chairman.
Isn't that a separate proposal?
Just hold on a minute.
Chairman, as long as it's constitutional, I don't have a problem with it. And I'm
Okay.
sure the other members don't, in case somebody can't make it. At the moment, everybody's busy, Chairman. So it's a working group to work for the council. If members want to substitute and it's not breaching the constitution or the terms of reference when they're written and go to council for approval, I'm more than happy. Thank you, Councillor Channer.
So now we have assented the recommendation. Is that correct? Are we in agreement for the recommendation that a group is established? It consists of 7 members, 4 independents, 2 Conservatives and 1 Democratic Alliance. Can I have assent?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
the members of that working
Agreed.
group are Councillor Siddle, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Swain. Could I have the names of the two Conservatives, please?
Well, I think I did come up with initially myself, Councillor Durham and Councillor White. Councillor Durham said it wasn't his thing. So I guess that leaves the two names.
So could you confirm those names, please, Councillor Channer?
Well, it's the names without Councillor Durham in. Councillor Channer and
White.
Yes.
So Councillor Channer and Councillor White are the representatives from the Conservative group. Councillor Helm, as you are the only member from the Democratic Alliance on this committee, we will put in your name forward. Is that correct?
Thank you very much, Chairman.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 12, which is Malden Citizens Advice, request for a review of funding found on pages.
Chairman, just before you move on,
yeah.
Members just need to agree those members.
Okay, sorry. That's okay. So do we have assent for those 7 members?
Agreed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So now I can move on to item number 12, which is Malden Citizens Advice, request for review of funding found on pages 195 to 197. Members are reminded that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Mr. Leslie, could you please present the report?
Chairman, if I may, I think it's myself that's going to present
okay.
the report.
Sorry. I had you down, Mr. Leslie down, Mr. Holmes.
That's fine.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, a short report, members, for consideration this evening. We have had an approach from Malden Citizens Advice Bureau regarding future funding. That is included in the report at Appendix 1. But I do believe we have a speaker from the Citizens Advice here this evening who would like to make a very short presentation to the committee to support their request as detailed in the report. So I wonder if it might be appropriate this time to ask the CAB representative to make their presentation, then I can wrap up the report at the end if that's convenient.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Yes, members, we have Mr. Philip Wakeling, Chairman of the Malden District Citizens Advice, in attendance. I've agreed for Mr. Wakeling to make a short presentation. Mr. Wakeling, please could I ask you to now make your presentation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. Now, the essence of our proposal is for a new 3-year contract with the District Council for the provision of generalist advice. The reason why this is particularly important to us at the moment is that we're about to make a proposal to renew our contract with the National Lottery for specialist debt, homelessness prevention and welfare benefits. We're aiming for another 5-year term with the lottery worth £350,000, and we want to be able to demonstrate that we have secure funding in place with the District Council for the delivery of core services for at least the greater part of that term. In essence, we can't provide specialist advice without being able to demonstrate that we can provide generalist advice. Now, the significance of the lottery contract to Malden and the district is that under the current contract with the lottery, we prevent homelessness for over 30 families every year. We coach around 100 families in tenancy and housing related issues to help them secure or retain their homes. We achieve benefit gains of in the order of £500,000 every year by appealing incorrect decisions, and we anticipate that most of this money will be spent in the district. Over the life of the contract, we expect that around 400 families will gain additional income through successful resolution of complex benefit cases and appeals, whilst 350 will report improved well-being, and a further 320 disabled people will be more able to afford the care and the help that they need. We additionally managed to write off in the order of £500,000 worth of unmanageable debt every year, but more importantly, around 250 people each year going through us an understanding of how to manage their money and avoid future indebtedness, with consequential benefits for family relationships and both physical and mental health. So in summary, if we're able to grant us a new 3-year term with some inflation protection built in, it'll put us in a far better place to achieve this vital renewal with the lottery. It's worth noting that the lottery doesn't renew contracts as a matter of course, and so we want to make their decision as straightforward as possible. Additionally, I can confirm that the services which we provide cannot be obtained from any other source in the district, not least because we have to be FCA accredited and regulated in order to provide the debt advice. So we'd very much welcome your help with this renewal. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whaling. Councillor Channer, could I please ask you to turn your camera off?
Oh, sorry, Chairman, I thought I had. Beg pardon.
Thank you.
Oh, and my mute, sorry.
So the recommendations are that members, item little 1, consider the request from Maldon Citizens Advice at Appendix 1. Little 2, confirm if they wish to increase funding to Maldon Citizens Advice from 73,500 to 75,000 for 21-22. Consider funding for 22-22 onwards as part of a report on future procurement to be brought back to the Strategy and Resources Committee in spring 2021. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video and unmute your microphone and state your name now, please.
Nick Skeens, seconded.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skeens. So the first person I had to speak was Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I think that this item needs to be deferred. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the past working with the CAB, and I know they do a very valuable job. However, my main concern is also for the taxpayers in the district and getting value for money. That being said, I'm not disputing CAB do a good job, but every other authority, I'm sure Mr. Leslie can confirm to me, only gives about 20% of the funding for the Citizens Advice Bureau, bearing in mind we have few reserves left. And every year we've been assured by the Citizens Advice Bureau that they're going to gain extra external funding to be in line with all of the other CABs in the UK. We are the only authority that gives such a high percentage of funding, which the reason this needs to be deferred is we don't even have the financial figures in the report this evening. Now, if we go on past figures, we've generally been funding at about 80%, and every other local authority funds at 20%, and the CABs make up the 80%. My other concern is we have, and every time this comes before us, the officers assure us they're going to give us detailed figures, and generally I've managed to get them included, but sadly not this year. The other issue I have is the rental charges for their offices in Maldon District Council. If you go to the Chelmsford CAB, which is much, much larger than Maldon, they include the rental charges within the funding that they get. So in other words, to account legally, as everybody will know as accountants, you can't just lose bits of money because they're inconvenient. The rental charge should be put down as a charge to the CAB, and then it should be listed as funded by Maldon District Council. Otherwise, this is tax evasion because you're not giving clear figures. Now, I don't know if this has changed, but I suspect this money is on top of the 73,000. So I imagine it will actually be about £120,000 worth of funding. Now, we don't give any other charity free support and free accommodation. And I've had it raised from other charities. Well, why do CAB get free offices? Can't we also have free offices? So I think this needs to be looked at. You know, I think this needs to go back to the working group for assessment. I mean, maybe I'm wrong with the previous figures. I don't know. Okay. It needs to go back to the working group to be assessed. You know, because if I'm wrong and if we have sorted the funding, then fine.
Councillor White, could I stop you then and ask Mr. Holmes to come in and answer some of those questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, the purpose of the report really was to look at a one-year extension. I think for the very reasons you've identified regarding value for money, we do need to ensure that we are receiving value for money for the service, and many of the things you've spoken about this evening would be included in that review. So pragmatically, we looked at the fact that we need to do that procurement exercise. We obviously looked at the CAB's request for their initial help in the first year and felt that was the kind of middle ground where we would recommend that you perhaps consider that increase. but obviously then allowing that more detailed review and value for money exercise to be carried out before we make a commitment to the future. We obviously understand the CAV need a longer period of time to plan and work, but obviously we do need to make sure we are getting that value for money. So really, essentially, that's what those recommendations were setting out to do. But obviously, we now have a working group which could actually do some work on that, perhaps between now and the next report, which will come in January, for members with the detail perhaps they're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Does that answer your questions,
Yes.
Councillor?
It does and it doesn't, because, you know, we are meant to be setting the budget here and we don't even have any accounts. We have nothing to decide. And we initially gave them £10,000. So could this go to the working group before a decision is made on funding this?
We are setting our budget, in terms of the CAB, and we're doing a provisional agreement for that first year, and then it will come back and we'll have further detail for future years, and also looking at if there are any other providers. Is that correct, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Chairman, if members were minded, then I think the issue around the recommendations is that we would put that additional for the first year into the growth items that are coming up before in January. So I think between now and January we can look at the detail. If this committee is happy, then obviously that can be included as part of that bid going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because this was supposed to happen last year and it didn't happen.
So hopefully we can resolve that this time, Councillor White. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I vehemently disagree with Councillor White. I really don't care what others do. I actually care what this district does and the decisions that this council makes. And I feel that the council should support the requirements and the bid that the Citizens Advice Bureau have put in. I think it's probably more important when you drill down and look into the work that they provide across the district and the actual cost savings that they make by the services that they provide. Mental health now is probably more important than ever with COVID-19 and the challenges that that's brought across many rafts of society. So I think that, again, for me, it's a small amount of money that is clearly been identified, and we should support it. And just remember that the previous Conservative administration has given out interest-free loans to people like Stowe Maries to support fantastic initiatives.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lagan.
And if we can't support this initiative, then there's something wrong, in my view.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lagan. Councillor Skeens.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Fantastic value for money from CAB. I utterly support the proposal, and that's it really. And I support what Councillor Lagan says too.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Skeens. Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to come back a bit on what Councillor White has said. Basically, they're rent-free, rate-free, heating-free, lighting-free, so that all adds up to a tremendous amount of money. It might be value for money, but it's still an awful lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Helm. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, a bit slow with the mouse there, Chairman.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. I must admit I would like to see more funding to the CAB. If it's additional funding to what we already do, that would be fantastic. If it would come from outside the council, because we are kind of taking it from one hand to give it to the other. If it's residents' money that's going back out to residents, that doesn't entirely make sense to me. However, moving on from there, one question is, do we in fact charge for rent and then grant it back? And if we do, does the 75,000 odd that we're looking at include that? Or is it free rent plus this? And the other question is, I really would like to support this. I'm keen to, but at some point we're going to have to look at what we don't do in order to fund it. It's not a vast amount, and we've got lots of service improvement items to look at, which the working group has. So I do hope very much it can be done, but I would appreciate knowing if we do in fact charge for rent and we grant it. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Thompson, Mr. Holmes or Mr. Leslie, can you answer that question?
Sorry, Chairman, just unmuting. My understanding is that we don't charge directly. It's part of the package that we provide, the accommodation, but I will confirm that tomorrow and send a note to confirm that. That's my belief.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, Chairman, I'm going to have to use my mobile like I've been using, because showing this screen as it went earlier, I can't seem to keep the document up and then be flicking between the two. So I've got the report on my mobile, and forgive me if I don't get it quite right because this print's quite slow, but that's what I've been having to do for a little bit now. I would say regarding the cab, and we had the discussion in the chamber, and it was relatively recent, if you recall, where Malden District Council had reduced the money we gave to the cab. And then we had the debate in the chamber recently because they did ask for the reinstatement, and actually that was agreed that we would do, because I think I hear what Councillor White said, and I can understand wanting to get the clarity on the figures absolutely regarding the rent and other issues, and Councillor Helms made that point. But we did agree at council to actually support that. And I think what it is, I must declare, I suppose, that although I'm appointed by the council, I sit on the cab liaison group, and I have visited the cab. And I think I said it at that meeting, the reason why I'm supportive of the cab, because I really did not have a total comprehension of just exactly what they did and really what it meant for the district and our residents by having a cab that is very active and supportive, and because of the money we give. And I think with the COVID times, and I think the appendix actually highlights this, we have yet to really face the legacy of what COVID may mean to this district. And therefore, that's why I'm really giving great consideration to this. Now, I can say the reason largely why the council did also agree to give that money and go back to where we were was because through the transformation process, and I have to say this, without the cab being there, and Sue Green's not here tonight, but she did actually respond at that time, it was the cab actually that we had to utilise very much to assist, certainly with certain service areas. In fact, our homelessness, I think the support given enabled us to really be efficient and effective at that time. So therefore, and I hear what Mr. Holmes said, and that was something I was going to say, bearing in mind Councillor White's concerns, and now we hear from Councillor Helm, that I think I can see why the 3 years is required, and I would probably be supportive of that. However, I think Mr. Holmes explained my thinking on hearing what Councillor White said. If we agree to one and then make sure we have a look at it all through the procurement process, that will give the answers also to some of the things that Councillor White has actually said she feels should have been actually before the committee tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Channer. Very good points. Councillor Stamp.
Councillor Channer has actually said nearly everything I wanted to say, and I thank her for it. I think that's an excellent speech. I have a query though. The gentleman who did the presentation, forgive me, I'm rubbish at names, he said it was to get a 3-year lottery funding. If we only agree to do it for 1 year, Chairman, does that affect his application to the lottery, to getting his lottery funding?
It could do, yes, Councillor Stamp.
Can we have clarity though, please? Because I think that is important on how we may vote, Chairman. Thank you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. That's my understanding. Mr. Holmes, is my understanding correct?
Yes, Jim, I think you are correct. I would say you're not. You still have time. This budget won't be set this evening. Obviously, we're taking this forward to January and February. So, we can go away and do that dialogue now with the CAB, so we can be very clear on what the implications are for members, and then through the working group, and then back to this committee. But I think we have to acknowledge we need to do some procurement work, and it does need to go through the normal budget process, which this is the start of really. So, but we can talk about the details and timings.
Do we know the deadline for the CAB? Do they, in terms of the lottery, do we know what their deadlines are? And if we don't, can we make sure that we have those, so that we can make a good decision?
Yes, of course. And if it's urgent, then obviously we can look at that separately. But yes, I will do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was concerned about that point, that it looked like the CAB needed to have a 3-year arrangement in order to get the lottery funding. But if a decision isn't essential tonight, then I would go along with the further investigatory work as far as it can be done, because I think it is very difficult to try and put this the CAB through a cost-benefit analysis from the council's point of view. And there is also the question of the utilisation of the district council space. In a sense, they are not costing the council much by occupying part of the space. But in general, I would support the idea of their 3-year agreement.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swain. Mr. Holmes, in terms of the 3-year funding, would we be able to get that procurement process and analysis done by February's S&R meeting?
I don't believe we can, because this is quite a large piece of work, and I know I've spoken to Mrs. Green around it. Looking at her recommendations here is that she'd be looking to do that by the spring of 2021.
Yeah, spring was the thing that I was trying to be a bit more concrete about.
Yes, indeed. I understand the issue. I think obviously we will look at the timetable and revisit that for you to see how quickly we could do that that exercise, because obviously I appreciate you would want to make a decision in the full knowledge of what the review might say. So I can't give you a promise this evening, but I will take your kind of wish away to see what I can do with it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors, members who'd like to speak? Councillor Swain, have you come back, or have you? Is it?
It's this question of the procurement process. I mean, are there any serious alternative sources that provide the same range of information and help that the CAB does?
Mr. Holmes.
I would agree it is difficult to find alternative providers. Obviously, other CABs in the past have potentially looked at providing services in other locations. That's a possibility. If it turns out that there is not the ability to do that competition, then obviously perhaps it becomes more of a negotiation. And I think we've done a really good job working with the CAB in setting up a service level agreement to look at the performance. Also talks about the contribution that's made. So if competition is difficult or not possible, then there's still a way to work with the CAB. But I think we simply need to do that review to establish where we are, really.
So that's perhaps something that can come to the working group. Once we move that process forward, that the working group could be shown whether there are alternatives, and that way we can move it quickly back to committee if necessary.
Yep, we can do that. That's fine.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so we come to the vote on the items, and
yes.
Sorry, did someone speak then?
There's some whispering going on, Chairman.
Whispering campaign.
I suddenly heard something then. I wasn't sure.
Yes, well, Chairman, I will admit to these things. My mute came off, and I was just asked a question by my husband if I wanted a cup of tea.
Can you get me one, please?
Obviously, that's extremely important, having a cup of tea.
Yes, yeah. Me too, please.
He's seen me balancing a mobile in one hand and looking at a screen with the other, so okay. I think he's being kind.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. So in terms of the recommendations, again, are we happy to do that via assent, or do we wish for a recorded vote? And do we want to take the items all together or separately?
Can we take separately, Chairman? And could you say what they are, because I'm...
Yeah. So the item 1 is to consider the request from Malden Citizen Advice at Appendix 1. Can we have assent that we have done that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yes.
Item 2 is to confirm that they wish to increase funding to Malden Citizen Advice from 73,500 to 75,000 for the year 21 to 22. Can we have a assent, or do we wish for a vote on this item?
Chairman, can I have clarity? Because
yes, you can.
Thank you. We have actually discussed it, but we haven't agreed it because we've still got information to come back. And Councillor White, when she started actually speaking originally, asked if it could be deferred. Now, I need to actually ask Mr. Holmes or whoever if we can at this stage to defer it. Otherwise, we're going to be making a decision and then going back on it, which we all know we can't do.
I think, yeah, before you go to Mr. Holmes, what I would like to say is item 2 is that we are for the year 21-22 agreeing to continue funding to give that security to the Citizens Advice Bureau, and we are increasing their funding from 73,500 to 75,000. So that's a separate item to then looking at future years. So yeah, my view is, yeah, we need to take that as a separate issue. Mr. Holmes.
I think that's correct, Chairman. I think this will give the security for CAB for the next year. If you wish to see that increase come up from 73,500, this is the opportunity to do that. But I would say this recommendation still goes forward to the next committee and then to council. So there's still a couple more steps yet. Yeah.
So can I have assent for item 2?
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. And then
I would like it recorded that I don't agree that because we have no financial figures to base this on. It's not because I don't want to support the CAB, it's because we don't have any financial records to base the decision on. And I say it's not that I don't want to do it. I don't feel comfortable with taxpayers' money when I've seen no accounts.
Okay, as we do not have assent, we will have to have a recorded vote on this item. So, Ms. Bird, could you do a recorded vote, please?
Yes, Chairman, of course. Members, if you could just indicate when I call your name if you're for, against or abstaining.
Sorry, Tara.
Can I just be clear what we're voting on,
We're
please?
voting on little 2, which is to confirm that they wish to increase funding to Malden Citizens Advice from 73,500 to 75,000 for the year 2021 to 22.
That is at the count that we recommend that they have.
Correct. Correct. Tara.
Thank you, Chairman. Starting with Councillor Mrs. Channer, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
Yeah, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Helm.
Abstain.
Councillor Lagan.
4, please, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
4.
And Councillor Miss White.
Against, but only because we do not have any accurate accounts.
Thank you, Councillor White.
Thank you very much. So, Chairman, the results of that are 9 for, 1 against and 1 abstention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bird. So item 3 is to consider funding for 22-22 onwards. Did I say that right? 2022 onwards as part of a report on the future procurement to be brought back to strategy resources in spring 2021. So and we are now suggesting that the information is presented to the working group, and if necessary, if there is not an alternative provider, that we bring that further forward. Is that correct, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, yes, Chairman. I think perhaps if you wanted to be a little bit clearer on little 3, you could say as soon as possible, and rather than spring 2021, and we will obviously endeavour to do that.
Correct. Thank you. So if we change that to as soon as feasibly possible, that this item is brought back to the Strategy and Resources Committee rather than spring 2020. Can you make that amendment, Tara, please?
Yes, of course, Chairman.
Thank you. Again, do we need a recorded vote, or are we happy for assent on that item?
Agree that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Item 13. Any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent, and there are none. Which brings us on to item 14, the exclusion of the public and press. As chairman, to move that under section 108. Sorry, yes, Councillor Channer.
Oh, sorry, get my mobile out of the way. sorry, Chairman, I did declare an interest earlier.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
And just to, reiterate that I'm going because there's within the report a body mentioned that I am related to, if you like. So I don't mean a body I'm related to, it's an organisation that I'm related to, and it's named in the report. So I feel it much better, as I've never been involved in any discussions about any matter to do with what the report might be alluding to. I'm leaving now, Chairman. I'm going to, if you give me time to get out.
Yes, of course, Councillor Channer. Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson, you wanted to make a suggestion.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it was only because this business of declaring on items that are private and confidential is awfully complicated. So sometimes it can be helpful if the member just states at the beginning of the meeting that they have an interest, and we wait until we get into the private session before they actually tell us what it is. And then we don't have to talk all round it. It's just,
I think
I've been there before, and I do know what Councillor Chan is talking about, and I'm not at all disagreeing with what she's saying. But if she was still here at the very beginning of the next item, she'd be able to tell us what she really meant, as indeed would other people who've mentioned.
I think she was trying to be helpful. I'm
absolutely certain she was trying to be helpful. It's just a thought. If anyone thinks it really matters, that they tell us what it really is about, then they can always wait until we get into that part of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for that wonderful suggestion. Very helpful. So item 14, that under section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paras 1 and 2 of part 1 of the schedule 12A to the Act, and that this satisfies the public interest test.
Happy